We now know even more new information about the upcoming update thanks to Expansive World's live stream yesterday. We got to see the full list of animals that are getting class changes, and I'll actually put that list on screen here as we go along. And we learned some really interesting information. Black bear are getting a drink time change. Now, I'm going to make a guide about how to actually go about that because there's not going to be a pop reset, and it's going to be potentially a little bit confusing if you didn't watch the stream. That guide will be this weekend during the early access period, so if you're looking for that, it'll be in a couple of days. And then finally, we also got to see the customized binoculars for the first time on that stream as well, and I'm looking forward to being able to do that with our own. But this video, I really want to focus on the animal class changes because some of those are going to be more impactful than others. For instance, grizzly bear going from 7 to 8, crocs going from 7 to 8, that literally makes no difference because there's no class 8 weapon anyway. You're still going to use your 338, your 300, things like that. And also, anything like a 30-06, a 308, those go up to class 8 anyway, so you'd still be able to use those. Even like the 44 lever action that we use on pretty frequent occasions for crocs, its class is 3 to 8, so it would still be ethical for them. Things that I do want to focus on though are things such as the pronghorn here on Silver Ridge Peak. So we're going to grab the Mosin and go and try to take one out. Now, best I can tell from the information on stream, the animals themselves aren't changing at all. It is just basically the ethical weapons that we can hunt them with. So kind of seeing what works and what doesn't in this hunt is going to be the entire point. Now, pronghorn with the Mosin, we used to do that actually kind of often just because it does work so well. So that's going to be no big deal. And I didn't bring the 44 lever action for this one because frankly, we kind of know that would drop a pronghorn too. So I just wanted to kind of demonstrate this particular change, pronghorn going down to class 3, not going to be any big deal. And javelina's another one. I don't think we need to show that. They're not very resilient creatures as is, and I actually think it's a good change going down to class 3. What I think is actually more likely with javelina is they're probably going to get hunted with the 243, more so than anything else. And the reason for that is, here on Rancho, bobcats are now able to be shot with class 2 weapons as well, and I think that's just going to make sense from a loadout perspective. And you can very clearly see, even though they were class 4 and are going to be class 3, a class 2 weapon like the 243 does a really good job, and we will go and take a bobcat with it as well, even though that's kind of been something that's been done for a long time. But the reason I actually want to focus on bobcat at least enough to go and do that is because it was kind of a comment just made in passing. But JaxyBeard, I think, alluded to the fact that there's going to be a change to like the max weights of the bobcats. 45 kilo makes no sense. It has never made any sense. Bobcats should not get that big. And I really hope that's going to be true because it just always bugs me seeing tracks of an animal that probably should max at maybe 25, 30 kilo on the really high side, going up to 45. And like I said, these are probably some of the less impactful changes, but they do make at least a little bit of a difference in certain cases. But for both the javelina and the bobcat, a long shot, they're going to run a couple of meters and go down. And there's a bunch of them, like I talked about, that probably make next to no gameplay difference. I mean, you can now ethically take a mule deer with something like the 45 handgun. Other than that, mule deer are usually hunted with something like a 308 or even say the M1. Any class 4 to 8 weapon, it makes no difference going from 6 to 5. That's why we're not going to focus on them. The ones that I think are probably the most impactful, maybe sandbar deer to a lesser degree going from 6 to 7. Now you can use the 300, but primarily Gemsbok going from class 8 to class 6. We have the gators going from 6 to 7. That's another one we can now use the 300 on. And I also think maybe a little bit of a difference with the wild boar and feral pigs. But again, you can do pretty well with a class 4 weapon as is. Now, Gemsbok. I think this is what we're going to spend the most time on in this video, because for one, it is the biggest change. Going down 2 classes from 8 to 6 is a really big deal, and not being able to use the 300 also is a pretty big deal. Gemsbok in real life are known for being incredibly tanky, and I think that's why they made them class 8 all the way back, I think in 2018 or 19 when they came out. It made sense, but as far as the weight goes, class 6 probably is going to make more sense. So you may first think of using something like the 7mm, And I think that's what we're going to try. We've got the 7mm bolt action, and I do want to compare 3 different weapons here and just kind of see how they do. And for that, we're going to try to make very specific and repeatable shots. So we're going to go back to hopefully exactly 150. And of course that one's going to turn, so we may end up shooting that one instead at 150 because we want them perfectly broadside for a good comparison. That should be pretty good. So let's see what we can do with that. I think we're just a hair over. Gonna go just behind the crease. And I want to try to pay attention to quick kill. And if that was just double lung, actually the 7mm might be a really good option. These guys, I mean, they've always even soaked up 300 shots pretty well. And again, that's why I want to focus on the quick kill number, so we can actually compare across different weapons, and we'll even use the 300 on one for a final test just to show maybe the difference. But in this case, that was 150.4 meters, straight up double lung, no vertebrae or anything to influence that. 81.3% quick kill. That's good that it's not 100. That way we can actually compare across the other weapons. So the next thing I've got is the 303. Maybe you're someone who wants a little more capacity. The 3-round capacity, the 7mm, maybe not enough. I think this is the hardest hitting weapon with 5 rounds, other than something like, you know, the larger calibers that won't any longer be ethical. So try to make this as fair as possible. I think we're at like the exact same distance. We'll go with the 303, try to make the exact same shot. And we'll see what the quick kill looks like as far as that. It's gonna be close. That's actually pretty impressive, so I thought maybe the Gemsbok could have a bigger impact on loadouts than it may actually end up having. Now, at the end of the day, there are things like Wildebeest on this map that you're still going to carry a class 4 to 8 weapon for anyway, or a 4 to 9 in the case of the 7mm. So there is always that to consider, but if the Gemsbok were just going to be absolute tanks, and some of these weapons didn't work as well, that would have maybe made a bigger impact, but it's looking like, honestly, if you want to bring your 7mm 303, I would even say like a 30-06 the way things are looking right now, it should be fine. And maybe one other thing to keep in mind, I have seen sometimes a difference in quick kill between a male and a female animal on the same shot, so if this is a little bit lower, the male models are a bit bigger, so that is just kind of worth considering. But double lung again, this time 68% quick kill, so it is lower. Maybe due to the fact that it was a female Gemsbok the first time, maybe the 303 is just a little less powerful than the 7mm, but either way, both seem to be very usable. Now what I actually think may give the best performance on Gemsbok is the cap lock muzzleloader, and we may have to even give up a little bit of additional space here, because I don't think we're going to get to 150. I don't know why he's just standing there, but we've made it to 158. I'd say we can call that good. We know the cap lock hits insanely hard. When it came out, there were a lot of requests for it to get moved to class 9 because it's so impressive, and it looks like here we may have found a winner. So 81% is our current best to beat, and again that was on a female Gemsbok, and it was a little bit lesser distance. This time 158 meters. Double lung again, you can see the better performance too, like that's all the way through double lung. And we are at 100% on the quick kill for the cap lock muzzleloader. So if you're just hunting Gemsbok, I do think that is the clear favorite, and I guess that does make the point. Even though they're getting demoted to class 6 and we can't use the 300 anymore, you can still take them down really quickly and effectively with a weapon that's going to be ethical with the change. Now we're at the very end of Gemsbok drink time, but we may be able to go ahead and make that test with the 300 as well, just for a proper comparison. Now, I really hope it's going to slow to a walk, and it just did. Should be right in behind the shoulder, same shot, and based on how quickly it's going down, that should be 100% quick kill as well, but pretty darn comparable to the cap lock muzzleloader. And while I thought this could be a big deal, I really don't think it is. Yeah, the cap lock is the best option and performs pretty darn similarly to the 300, but the 7mm and the 303 both did just fine. It might cost you, I don't know, 20 to 50 meters on the track, something like that, but it's really no big deal. But just to show it, 100% quick kill from the 300. We did also hit the leg bone there, so that maybe could have helped a tiny bit. And actually, as far as penetration goes, though we weren't as broadside, the cap lock even did a little bit better. So I suppose, since we just used the 300, we'll be off to Emerald Coast for just a second to shoot a sandbar deer or two. So obviously, this won't be ethical now, but being able to take a sandbar with the 300, you could say that's gonna matter, but here's the thing. A very non-special 4 to 8 weapon, the 30-06, it can take down a sandbar easily with 100% quick kill. So while the 300 I guess is going to be nice, and I would say the biggest impact there is just naturally knowing that sandbar are 300 kilo animals at the max weight, and they're a pretty big species on this map. Sometimes I do just go to my biggest weapon without thinking about it. I think that probably is a bigger impact there, just not having to think about it as much, more so than what the 300 can do performance-wise. Because, I mean, I think this is going to be very obvious. But that's what's going to happen. When you make a decent shot on a sandbar with the 300, it'll be nice to be able to do that. You can pretty reliably drop them anyway, like a single lung shot from the 30-06, easily got 100% quick kill, double lung would most certainly. But I guess it is a bit of an advantage, having a slightly more powerful weapon, and you need them for bantang anyway. Most probably use them for crocodiles, so it adds something that you can actually take with the 300, and again, I think just, for me anyway, and I'm assuming I'm not the only one, mentally, it will be nice just to be able to take the biggest deer species on the map with your 300, maybe as you'd expect to be able to. And in other news, before we move up to Mississippi, I think we might have just killed a Hall of Shame sandbar. Minus the fact that we used the 300, which isn't currently ethical, that would have been a bronze by more than 10. So I guess we'll tax that, and we'll jump to Mississippi for gators primarily, but also for wild hogs. So probably one thing to note with gators, if you're making consistent neck shots and just insta-dropping them, this makes basically no difference. But if you're someone who maybe goes for more lung shots, it could be a pretty big deal. Before we take this shot too, one thing to avoid, don't hit the leg. If you hit the leg, you're just not going to get the penetration through to both lungs. That, I think, is going to. And you see too, I mean, even with the 300, they're tanks. This actually could be maybe the biggest impact. I thought it was going to be Gemsbok, but when we do some comparisons here, maybe we'll find out gators actually matter the most. I mean, just for fun, this one's not going to be like our official comparison. But I also brought the 7mm, which is one of the more powerful weapons you can use right now. That might have been double lung. We'll kind of pay attention and see. More opportunities to compare probably just give us more data that can be useful. But broadside on a male gator around 150, that was 143, double lung. So we managed to avoid hitting the heart, which in this case we don't want to do, just to be able to compare 76%. Curious what it was on that female gator closer, and with the 7mm. I thought, anyway, that she should have been dead quite some time ago. There she is. And for this, double lung, 62 meters away, so that distance could really matter. 49%. So obviously big upgrade. Being able to use the 300, there's nothing at all that didn't benefit the 7mm here. It's a female gator, so a smaller model, if that even matters, closer range, and even yet, still about, what, 20-some% lower? I think that actually could be a really big difference, but we'll still use the 7mm at 150 to really get a proper comparison. So naturally, being less cooperative this time, and that's going to be kind of just part of the challenge, I suppose. Kind of similar angle though. Gotta avoid the leg, and let's see if we ended up with a double lung shot. Boy, if we did, it is a massive difference at that range. So for that, single lung, and obviously that was 0% quick kill. So we're gonna need to be more broadside, though that is another thing that 300 added. We weren't broadside there and it still punched through to the second lung. I kinda doubt we can do much better than that. That's about as perfectly broadside as we can get. And he is going down faster this time, so I think that's double lung. But again, I'm not so sure it's going to be any quick kill. So, moment of truth, double lung, 118 meters, so again, favoring the 7mm, but the wind was bad. If I would have backed up more and moved, it would have spooked him. 27% quick kill, versus, was it 71 or 79, something like that? That's a huge deal. Like, that's potentially saving you from exactly this scenario, at least sometimes, when you gotta sit there and wait for them to float over forever, versus maybe getting the drop like at the edge of the water or before they get to the water. I think we found the thing that actually matters the most, and like, obviously being able to use the 300 matters a lot. I didn't expect it to be that much more impactful than Gemsbok going down 2 classes was, but we do have the Wild Hogs to talk about, and I don't think that's going to take terribly long. So essentially, the only thing that really matters here is the fact that we can now use the 9.3 on the Wild Hogs, and I mean, it will perform really, really well at 150, even though the spotting still says 200 because we haven't unspotted them. It's a really powerful round. Like, obviously it is going to drop them in their tracks. The thing about it is, things like the 308 and 7mm can also do a pretty good job, so I don't think we'll get a broadside shot at those ones running off, but we can do one final comparison just to see if the 9.3 adds that much. But something to keep in mind, you are limited on your zeroing range only to 150. And of course, because it dropped in its tracks, 100% quick kill, that was double lung and liver, though I don't think the liver had anything to do with it. We'll go and try to get one more. Now I think probably we all sort of expect this, but using the 308 AR, another just sort of unremarkable 4-8 weapon, it's not going to insta-kill it, but it ran like 5 steps and dropped. So I think through this kind of exercise, we've probably, I would say definitively found out the gator change going up to class 7, probably the most impactful. Gemsbok expectedly still is impactful, though less so than maybe we thought, and more than maybe what weapons we can use on individual animals now. I think the loadouts that are going to be impacted, that's a big deal. Like over on Silver Ridge Peaks needing a class 3 weapon now, that was not something that was ever a thing in the past. You could pretty much get by with just like the 7mm and a shotgun. Now you gotta have either the Mosin, the 44 lever action, even the 243, those sorts of things. And I do think that will make it kind of fun, having to find those new ideal loadouts. But I think on that note, that is going to do it for this video. So as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.